guys, Happy New Year! Today I'm going to be talking to you about the top 5 books that I read in 2017. And just to get this out of the way, most of the video I filmed at the middle of the year because I was going to do like a mid-year favorites video, but then I never ended up posting it. So I'm going to use some of the clips. That's why I'll look a little bit different from how I look now. But in that video I did talk about my top 3 favorites and they still remain in the top 5, but there's 2 more books that I've added that I read later on in the year. So yeah, let's just get straight into it. So the very first book that I read this year was Heartless by Marissa Meyer, and this book is a reimagining of Alice in Wonderland, but it's in the perspective of the Queen of Hearts before she became the Queen of Hearts as we know in Alice in Wonderland. After I read Heartless this year, I did go ahead and read Alice's Adventures in Wonderland, or Alice in Wonderland, whatever it is. I read the original book and unfortunately I like that a lot less than this book, which is strange because you would think that I'll really like the original, but it was really quirky and weird and almost too random. So I might give Alice's Adventures in Wonderland another go sometime in the future. Maybe I might like that a bit more if I kind of researched more into it. Maybe there's things that I actually didn't pick up so much, and maybe reading it a second time I might like it a bit more. However, I really liked Heartless, not just because I'm a huge fan of Marissa Meyer and her writing and her characters, but just the story itself is very unique. I really like the characters that were in Heartless, and it kind of gives a different perspective from when they appear in the original story. You are really sympathetic towards Catherine, who is the Queen of Hearts in this book. Catherine is actually a really nice woman and all she wants to do is bake and open her own bakery, but unfortunately through circumstances and what her parents want from her, she can't seem to fulfill that dream. And that's just the beginning of kind of her downfall. I really love the way Marissa Meyer wrote the characters. They were really lovable and it was kind of tragic, but I kind of liked it. I kind of like reading from the Queen of Hearts perspective. She was truly kind of a nice person at the very beginning, but throughout the book you do see that Queen of Hearts spark every now and then. It's pretty amazing how it kind of wraps up in the end. It's sweet, it's whimsical, and the writing just flows. It's not so random and the writing isn't so abrupt like Alice's Adventures in Wonderland. It has more of a linear writing style. It was really a sweet and fun read and I really enjoyed it. It wasn't the best of Marissa Meyer's works that I've read, but it's definitely up there, and I love Marissa Meyer. I love the way she writes her characters and the unique way she reimagines fairy tales and other stories and makes it her own, and it's really fun and I can't wait to see what kind of books she brings out next. Heartless was definitely one of my favorites of this year. Not that I've read that much this year, but it really left a good impression at the beginning of the year. So still, so far, it's holding strong. So the next book that I read, I'm pretty proud of because it's a reread and it's also a classic, and that is Frankenstein by Mary Shelley. I first read this book when I was in high school, and during that time, of course, because we had to study it, it wasn't a very pleasant reading experience, but still, for the first time studying a required reading at school was actually enjoyable for the first time, because usually when we have required reading I didn't so much enjoy it that much except for Shakespeare. At the time I didn't read many classic books, so I kind of regarded this very highly and I thought that it was one of the best classic books that I had read during that time. Now rereading it, it's definitely not as great as I remembered it to be, but it was still really enjoyable. The writing is again still very beautiful. Mary Shelley just has a way with her prose and the way she brings the atmosphere through her writing. It's definitely a darker, more tragic read, but at the same time it was suspenseful and very mysterious, even though I knew how it ended. If you guys have not read Frankenstein, I definitely recommend it. It's considered one of the first science fiction novels that emerged in literature, and I would agree. It does have scientific aspects, and I can see why it's considered a science fiction book, but it also has other themes that it explores. It's almost tragic the way Dr. Frankenstein's story kind of plays out, and also the monster. Very innocent at the beginning. He was created and abandoned in the world. He definitely turns towards a darker path, and that is something that was really tragic and kind of emotional, and yeah, I still regard this as one of my favorite classics, but still to this day I haven't read many classics, so who knows, in the future it might still stay as one of my favorites or not. But so far I did enjoy the reread aspect of Frankenstein. Sometimes Frankenstein gives me the creeps more than the creature, to be honest. And I don't remember Frankenstein being so dramatic, but sometimes when he writes what he feels or explains how he is feeling, it's just so dramatic. Frankenstein is seriously a drama queen, and I don't know, maybe it's just contextual, and when it was written it was kind of normal to be having all those emotions, but seriously, he was really intense. Some of his lines, it was just hilarious. Actually, I did laugh at some of his writing, even though it wasn't supposed to be funny. It was funny to me. That might be saying something about me. Just moving on. The Night Circus by Erin Morgenstern. This book, oh my gosh, let me just tell you that this book was super hyped a few years ago. I don't know what year it was, but it was super hyped one year, and then ever since, any book reviews that I've seen or read online just absolutely praises this book, and I can see why. Now that I've read it, it is definitely, well, it's in this video, so it is one of my favorite reads of this year, but I just thought this would blow my mind, but unfortunately it didn't. Maybe it's because there was such a big hype that I had these really high expectations of the book. Even though I didn't want to have these high expectations, it was inevitable because everyone raves on and everyone loves this book. Just saying, I do really like this book, except it wasn't as amazing and I wasn't mind blown by how great it was. It was definitely a more slower paced novel, and it took me a very long time to read. It took me a few months to read actually, and in between obviously I was reading other things, but oh my gosh, it was a mission to finish. But I was not gonna let winter go until I finished this book, and fortunately I did finish it before winter ended, so I achieved the goal of reading this book during the winter time. This book is every bit as magical as everyone says it is. It is unique. It's about a competition between two magicians, and they use the circus as kind of the battleground for their kind of duel. The competition spans through many years. The two magicians are trained from a really young age. There's a variety of different characters, and each one is unique and adds to the story. Every character had a unique place in the circus and a unique role. But more than that, it was the circus. It was the way that Erin Morgenstern had written what the circus was like. Erin Morgenstern's writing is so beautiful, and it just flowed and oozed with the imagery of the circus. Honestly, when you were reading the book, you could feel, you could taste, you could hear and smell what she was writing about. It was an experience. I give praise to the author for doing that. When you build a fictional world, especially in a book format, it is sometimes hard to really immerse the reader, but Erin Morgenstern, she really is able to do that. And basically the Night Circus is a circus that appears only at nighttime. They go to all these different countries. They kind of almost magically appear and disappear. Now, when I first read this book, I thought that it wasn't actually going to be fantasy. I thought the illusionists or magicians or whatever, or the people at the circus, were actually just real people doing their shows, and especially the two magicians when they were dueling. I thought it'd be more like The Prestige, where there wasn't any fantastical elements involved. I thought it was purely their own kind of tricks to outwit each other, but it actually is fantasy. It has magical elements in it. The two magicians actually are using their own sort of magical skills to enhance their shows. That was a little unexpected, and I guess I didn't really hate it. It kind of added to the feel of the whole story. Overall, I really enjoyed this book and it is really hyped up, but if by some reason you haven't actually picked this up, I think you should give it a go. It is kind of slow. It's actually really slow. There's no action. It goes through phases of it being about the competition between these two magicians to building the circus and just kind of each of these characters' lives who are involved with the circus. And I think the way it wraps up in the end did leave kind of a hopeful view on the story. So I did really like it. I feel like I will want to reread this one in the future. I was kind of expecting a little bit more from it, but overall I think it was a wonderful read and it was really beautifully written. And if you really want to kind of immerse yourself in a different era, a different time, and if you love circuses or that carnival kind of setting, I think you'd really enjoy this. So the second last book that I have for you today is Ready Player One by Ernest Cline, and this book, let me tell you, had so much hype that I was actually afraid of reading it and being disappointed by it. In a way, because the hype was so intense, I did have somewhat of an expectation going into it, but really, I didn't really know what I was getting myself into. I kind of knew that I would probably like it because the concept of this book was really intriguing and, you know, really catered towards what I enjoy in books. I can say that this book is really fast-paced. When you're reading it, it goes by really quickly. This is probably the only book this year that really made me want to read. Want to read in a sense where whatever I was doing, if I was at work, I would come straight home and then read this again. So I went through it really quickly, and that's probably partially because of the way it's written. It's written in a way where it's easy to digest and it doesn't really, you know, go off in tangents. It's really straight to the point and it's very action-packed. The story just doesn't stop. So when you go through each chapter, it kind of stops at almost sort of like a cliffhanger, but not really, and it was just really intense and it was exciting and it was really truly an adventure. And this book is actually being turned into a movie, so I really can't wait. I think it comes out at least in Australia about in March of this year, and it is directed by Steven Spielberg, which I am really excited about. For anyone else out there who hasn't heard of this book, it's kind of set in the near future where the population has grown so immensely that they kind of live in a congested sort of state, and because of this kind of, you know, situation, the living state isn't very good in the real world. People go into a virtual reality world and kind of live through that, and the currency is based through this virtual reality world. The owner of this virtual reality kind of program that he's created, where, you know, everyone lives off from, passes away and leaves an Easter egg for the people to find, and whoever gets the 3 Easter eggs end up inheriting his entire fortune and having complete control of the Oasis, which is this virtual reality world. And of course we're following, you know, our main character who is obsessed with finding this egg. For years people have been searching for the first Easter egg with no success, so people start to think that it's not really a thing until one day the first Easter egg is found. That's probably all I want to say. It's just a really fun read. It's got a ton of 80s references. Now, I'm not from the 80s, but I kind of got some of the references, and, you know, some of the stuff are kind of vague, but you kind of still understand, and it's kind of just like an added touch. If you're not from the 80s, it's not like you won't enjoy the book. The 80s references isn't really overpowering. There's a lot of it, but it's not in there for the sake of being a quirk. It's there for a reason, and it didn't really detract me from reading the story and understanding what was going on. I'm so glad that I eventually did read this, because for the longest time I kind of didn't want to read it, but then at the same time the concept was something that was so intriguing to me. There's a reason why there's a hype behind it. I'm yeah, really excited to see the movie, even though I kind of feel like it might be disappointing. I don't know. But since it is an adaptation, and I understand if they decide to go a different route, but hopefully I still enjoy it. I really liked Ready Player One and I do recommend it. It's one of my favorite books that I've read in 2017. The final and last book that I actually finished in 2017 was Perfume, The Story of a Murderer by Patrick Suskind. I can never say this author's last name, but whatever. Probably butchered it, who cares. Anyway, I knew that I would most likely enjoy it because I actually really liked the movie. Reading Perfume, officially, I think I still really like the movie. But I also really like the book as well, and obviously there's a lot of added touches in this book. I really enjoyed this. It was so beautiful, really creepy, a bit weird, but you know going into this book you're gonna be following a murderer essentially. It was interesting because I don't think I've ever read any books that followed a murderer. This book was exactly what I expected because, you know, I like the movie, but I think the main character you follow in this book is a lot more despicable. In the book it goes into more detail. The stuff that he does is just, no. He's so detached from humans. You're following our main character, Jean-Baptiste Granoli. Essentially, he's born odorless, but he has an incredible sense of smell. Life leads him into a direction where he becomes a perfumer, like a person that makes perfumes. And he pretty much wants to concoct the perfect perfume, whom he murders beautiful women who give off a really nice natural scent, who are also virgins, and he kind of makes his perfume out of it, and it's just really crazy and bizarre, but the writing is really beautiful. The descriptions of what things smell like are so accurate. The author, the way he writes is so descriptive, in the sense where it's not like visually descriptive, but it's all about the scent, because obviously this main character is obsessed with smell. He kind of sees the world through his nose. It's strange, but it's beautiful. But then again, it's about the murderer. It's completely bizarre. I loved it though. It's a book that was hard to get through, but I would probably read again in the future. It's a bit of a weird one, but it was the last book that I read in the year, and I thoroughly enjoyed it. So yeah, that's it for today guys. I hope you've enjoyed, and I totally recommend any of the 3 books that I talked about today. If you have read these books, please let me know in the comments below and we can discuss how we feel about the book. So yeah, I'll see you in my next video. Bye!